Hey, everybody. Welcome to Legit Takes. Yes, we have a name. We're excited to have a name. We appreciate all the feedback we got on the names, but we have a name. Legit Takes. We think it's awesome. LT, Lionel, Tony. Legit Takes. Get it? Hope you got it. We're very happy you could join us tonight. We've got a great show for you. It's going to be all about the Wolves. We got just the guy for that. Going to introduce to you formally here Mr. Lionel Jones. He is a Mr. Basketball in my world. He may not be Mr. Basketball in your world yet, but he should be. This guy has been playing and coaching and been involved in things for a long, long time. He's the current D1 women's coach for Viterbo University in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And without further ado, Lionel, if you want to give some more background on yourself before we start telling people why they should be listening to you on all things Wolves here tonight.
Well, Tony, thanks for that great introduction. First of all, I want to thank all the people that sent all the great names out there. It was really tough for us to choose one, but I think we came up with a fantastic name, Legit Takes. This is where you're going to find just real takes. Again, we're not compromised by anybody, but this is a place where you're not always going to hear what you want to hear, but we're going to give you our thoughts, genuine thoughts, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the takes that we have. In terms of basketball, just want to clarify, we are NAIA Division I at beautiful Viterbo University. I've been the women's coach there. I'm going into my 7th year. Just been a fantastic experience. I have a vast background in basketball. I've been lucky enough to be mentored and shaped by some of the best coaches in the country. People like Willie Jett, people like Eddie Andrist, Clem Haskins, just a nice mentor of mine, Dan Kosmowski, who used to be the associate head coach of the Gophers men's basketball team. And of course, in the previous show that we had, I mentioned Clem Haskins, who was just a fantastic person to me, down to earth. I worked a lot of his basketball camps, were the commissioner of his basketball camps, and the guy just taught me a lot about basketball and just really ingrained me in the Timberwolves organization in a variety of different settings. And I've just been lucky. Currently, I am the head coach of the AIST USA Select Women's Basketball Team.
That's right.
We're going to be participating in the United World Games in June. So we're going to be going over to Austria, Germany, which is going to be a fantastic trip. I've never been to Germany before, someplace I've always wanted to go. We've got a tour of Italy after the tournament. Again, basketball has been really good to me. If not for basketball, I probably would not have met my beautiful wife, Nicole. I probably would not have gone to the University of Minnesota and made a great friend like Tony Vandermark. So when I look at all the things that basketball has done for me, now I'm in the mode, 50 years old, trying to give back in some way. And hopefully some of my knowledge of people that are listening will help you love the game a little bit more and understand the game a little bit better. So that's enough about me. Let's get on to the Timberwolves and Nuggets.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, when we talk about something new, we give you a transition. That's what we do here, right? The biggest thing about what you just said, it just brought back more stories, right? And I just thought about something we'll cover another day. It could be a whole entire show about how, your wife and you became somebody to hang out with from my introduction.
That's amazing.
So I'm trying to avoid the story without getting into too many details. That's why I'm kind of stammering on my words here, but definitely something to talk about. That's how far back we go. So you talk about University of Minnesota and basketball and all the things that went along with that. And I know more background about you too that would be more interesting to talk about later too. But you're right. On to the Wolves. So recap of the last series, right? I mean, from my take, I'm going to just give a brief overview and then I'll let you get into the basketball side. My take as a fan of Minnesota sports teams was there's no way we're sweeping anybody. We've never beat this team in the regular season. We don't match up well. That's just what it felt like. And after the first couple games, I thought, wow, this is real team defense, and they got a chance on the road. and they did the job, right? I mean, I'm going to keep my take simple. What do you think about that overall just position as a fan and how we got there and just it's amazing to me that they did, right?
Yeah, it's pure dominance. It's pure dominance. And, I think the days of the super team is over. I mean, because what you saw was the Wolves just being the better team. And what I mean by that is they've got 10 players. And I think you hit on that last show where
Yeah.
we can go really deep into our bench. And so not only are we multifaceted when we do that and a very diverse team, but we fatigue you at the same time. The Suns have to play their big three big minutes. And against the number one defensive team in the league, a team where Chris Finch can throw bodies at you and come in waves, I think that was a hard matchup for the Suns. And it kind of teaches a lot of people that may be laymen when it comes to NBA basketball that a lot of people focused on, hey, the Suns swept the Timberwolves during the regular season. The regular season means absolutely nothing. There is a certain intensity when it comes to NBA playoffs. And to be quite honest, there are some coaches out there that will leave a few things in the playbook looking down the road saying, hey, if we face this team in the playoffs, this is what we're going to utilize. And I think Chris Finch smartly did some of that. And then at the same time, when you have a player like Anthony Edwards, who is just coming in to being one of the best players in the NBA, if not the best player in the NBA right now, I just think it was a tough matchup for the Suns. You could see the dominance in every single game. I think the Suns were really surprised at how good the Timberwolves were. But that was a statement tournament game, Tony. These guys are ready to go. And I'm just looking forward to the Nuggets series.
Yeah, there was one particular part of one of the games, and I wish we had the copyrights to be able to show you what we're talking about. But if you remember, I think it was game 3. I could be wrong. Could have been game 4. There was like 2.5 minutes left in the game, and Phoenix tried to do rotation all the way around to get a guy open for a 3. And they went all the way around the horn. I mean, and it was moved very, very quickly. And when it got to the far corner, the deep corner, which is closest to the camera side when we're watching, it moved all the way around. They tried to throw it back across, and our guy moved off of his primary guy and intercepted the pass on the other corner. And my son and I looked at each other like, that is not normal. How in the world did they move the ball around that fast? And we still took it away. Usually in the NBA, you see that and go, oh, here it comes. The ball's wheeling around. They're going to get a great 3. It's going to be wide open. And we locked it down. I think any team that watches that film is just going to go, oh my gosh, like we can't go around the horn unless it's really quick or we have some other deviation on that. So I was impressed just with the defensive intensity and the ability to come off the man to anticipate the pass. And it was a clean steal right on the baseline. It was amazing. And usually as a fan, I don't care about that kind of stuff, but I really appreciated the defensive efforts. So the last time the Wolves were this good, I think it's never, honestly, because they've never swept anybody. I'm just gonna be honest. I mean, defensively they've never been this good. Uh, I'm not even really sure how to put it into comparative terms because the Wolves team in 2004 wasn't this deep.
No,
They had some guys off the bench, but nowhere near this deep.
not even
They didn't
close,
have
Tony.
defensive. Yeah, it's just silly to even look at it. I mean, the building was loud. Yes, the building was loud then. KG was the crowd generator. Ant is that way now today, but we don't even need a crowd generating guy to make noise and amp up the crowd because they're just that good, right? That's what I'm seeing. I mean, last time you seen the Wolves this good in any shape or form, like what can you remember?
Yeah, you're right. First, you hit on the defensive side of it. Chris Finch does what we call in basketball lingo, he does a lot of Vegas shifting and it's constant rotation. And the only way you have the luxury of doing that is when you have 5 guys on the floor that can guard all 5 positions. So that creates situations where you're not afraid to leave the person that you're guarding. You're constantly leaving and rotating. I mean, there were times you saw Rudy Gobert was matched up against Kevin Durant on the perimeter, because
Yeah.
he's long and he's got great footwork. And so when you have that luxury as a defensive coach, you become 5 times the team that you normally would be if you couldn't do that. So when you say, when's the last time the Timberwolves have been this good? You're right. The answer is absolutely never. The only team that I can think of that could even be mentioned in the same conversation as this team was probably the Sam Cassell, Kevin Garnett, Sprewell team. And again, they weren't as deep. They weren't as versatile on the defensive end. And you could just see why this team is so good. I think they're going to be a tough matchup just going forward because they can do so many things on the offensive end and they can do so many things on the defensive end.
Yeah, and we'll get into those questions here. I've got some questions for you, almost pretty much like an interview, because this is what this should be at this point, because you're the basketball guy. When you think of legit takes, you think of things like, well, we were talking about, will the Wolves even sweep? And I was knocking on desk wood trying to worry about that. And the legit take now is, for me, is I honestly think that their next game to lose is on themselves. And I can't remember the last time I felt that way about any Minnesota team, other than maybe the Moss Cunningham era when they didn't win the NFC Championship game. That was
Yeah.
their game to lose. And every game they went into that whole year was their game to lose.
Yep.
Right now, every Wolves game is their game to lose. Denver's going to look at this matchup and go, oh no, right? That's my feeling. I mean, they're scared. They're going to need their crowd, every single bit of refereeing they can get to have a chance at winning both of those games. So I'm really excited. So just wanted to get in some questions with you. Really just hit on some key things. Everybody talks about defending the big man, the MVP, Jokic, right? I'm worried more about the end of games. The ball's going to Murray, and other key moments, the ball's going to him. And the other announcers were talking about this the other day. What's going to happen when he has the ball? How are we going to defend that? What kind of strategy? Are we going to shadow him? Are we going to put different guys on him? I'm just kind of curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, Murray's had some tough games against us this year. If you were to ask him, I don't know if he would admit this or not, but I think the Timberwolves have defended him really, really well. I think this year his highest game against us was 20 points. I think he had a 4-point game in there, 15-point game in there. So he has a lot of trouble getting off. And I think that's because the Timberwolves can throw a lot of athletic bodies at him. Sometimes you're going to see Daniels, and you'll see a lot of Walker. You're going to see Naz Reid at times. There are going to be times where you can switch and you're going to get Rudy Gobert. So I think the versatility of the Minnesota Timberwolves and what they can do on the defensive end causes Murray to think a little bit, causes a little bit of hesitation. And I think you're right. There are times where all the focus is on the Joker. But if you put all of your eggs in a basket in terms of stopping the Joker, Murray's going to get loose. And I think during the course of the season, the Minnesota Timberwolves have done a really, really good job at just constantly throwing bodies at people. You'll have one person guarding for about 5 minutes, and here comes another person. So you're not getting fatigued on the defensive end, and you're constantly putting fresh athletic people on him. And so I think he's just going to have a really, really, really tough time.
So that's a coach's dream, right?
Oh, yeah.
How are we going to defend him? Throw more fresh bodies at him. Foul trouble, game 3, game 4, doesn't matter. I've never seen games where the entire starting lineup has 2 fouls within, middle to end of the first quarter, and the team still comfortably wins. That's how deep this team is, right? I totally agree with you. So now McDaniels, he didn't play in the playoffs last year. What do you think his effect will be? I know there's some sample size in the regular season. However, when I look at him, I'm thinking that's the best $4 million contract a team could ever have. What do you think his impact's going to be on everybody?
Oh, it's a huge impact. I thought we really missed him tremendously in the playoffs last year. Broke his hand, punching a wall out of anger. And you could see the void that was left, when we needed him in the playoffs last year. I think he's a guy that can guard 4 positions. I necessarily wouldn't put him inside against Jokic, but he is that good of a defensive player. His length, he's got a 7'3", 7'4" wingspan. So that creates a lot of problem. And here's the deal. What he does, he doesn't necessarily have the quickest lateral step, but he can play catch up. He's a Hines guy. I always call him a Hines guy because he can play catch up.
That's great.
Once he gets beat, he has the length and the speed and the athleticism to be able to catch up to you and block shots, or at least make shots at the rim really, really hard. Contesting and closing out on the perimeter, now you have to adjust your shot to get it over that length, to get it over those long 7'3", 7'4" wingspan arms, to be able to create an accurate shot for yourself outside on the perimeter. So in terms of his defensive prowess, the Timberwolves are getting a steal. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and so he's essential to our defense. He's just as important as Rudy Gobert is protecting the rim. You take that guy out of the game, if he gets in foul trouble or if he gets injured, it changes the whole complexion of the Minnesota Timberwolves defense in the half court.
I think it was game 3. He was never on the floor. He had 2 points. This is when I realized how deep the team was. They still won.
Yes.
They still defended well. So I feel like it's next man up. And then you talked about closure speed. It makes me think of defensive backs who the ball's over their head, the receiver's going to get it, they close them down and they get the ball.
That's right.
In basketball, you don't really think of that, but it's true. And then, Anthony Edwards, how many times did we see him come from half court when a guy was at the top of the key and he knew the guy was going to go to the rim and he knocked the ball out and blocked right at the rim? I mean, so multiple guys with closure speed. Again, something the Wolves have never had. So it's just amazing to talk about. It's to step back and think about it. Really makes me appreciate it because they're crazy good athletically.
Yeah, and here's the deal. He's getting better on the offensive end. He banged a couple of important threes in that Suns series. He was aggressive taking the ball to the rack. Once this young man starts to get confident athletically and start forcing the issue on the offensive end, he's going to be one of the best perimeter players in the league. And I think you're starting to see, he's just scratched the surface. I think you're starting to see that he's starting to develop a more complete game. And he's saying to the world, hey, I'm a good defensive player, but I'm not just a defensive player.
So there's 2 wild cards in this series. We'll go into one of them right now. Towns. He's only played 1 game against the Nuggets this year out of 4. They don't have a lot of film on how they play against us with Towns. They don't have a lot of film on how we play very aggressively with McDaniels in the playoffs. They're not going off of a good sample size to scout, I feel like, right now with us. What do you think about Towns' impact here, only having 1 game against them?
Yeah, that hurts the Denver Nuggets, because I would want to get a little taste of what we're going to have to do in the playoffs, and they never really got that opportunity. And Karl Anthony Towns is just a different animal. You look at his big body and you look at him, you think he's a post, but he's one of the best, if not the best, shooting big man that's ever played this game. And once you start to sleep on his, 3-point shot, he can drive past you. He's strong enough to get to the rim. You saw that in the last series. He's more athletic than he looks. He essentially stretches the floor for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that takes a lot of know-how on the defensive end. You can have your defensive philosophy all you want, but you're going to have to deal with Karl Anthony Towns. I thought the Suns had a great game plan in terms of trying to guard Anthony Edwards. Now, they didn't execute it, but if you go back and watch that game, they had a triangle around him. They had someone on the ball, and then they had 2 people in gap defense. And that essentially left Karl Anthony Towns open for a lot of threes, and it widened those driving lanes. Now you got to pick your poison. You're going to have to do something similar with Anthony Edwards, or he's going to get off. And that in turn affects what Karl Anthony Towns is going to do. If you try to guard them straight up, you're going to have issues. I don't care if you're the world champions or not. You're going to have issues. And Karl Anthony Towns' ability to be able to stretch the floor is going to be huge for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Even though he played 1 game this series, I don't think that's going to affect him much because his game is his game. I just think for the Denver Nuggets, they're going to have to figure out quickly what works for them, how they're going to defend his ability to be able to stretch the floor. because that's going to be huge for them going forward. They're going to have to make sure that they can take care of him shooting the three ball, because he's shooting 41% from three out there, which
Yeah,
is
that's mental. That's
unbelievable.
yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's I'm a big enough of a fan to know that anything over 40 is crazy. And in the playoffs, that's just, I mean, if you do the math, if you're making 40% of your threes and 45% of your twos, you shoot threes. That's the math.
Yes.
As much as you can, and when you get a good open look. So Finch, we'll talk about him in a little bit as well, about something else that went wrong with him. But how do you think it's going to affect the team that he is not? Now, I'm not going to say for sure he's not going to make it. But as of a few hours ago today, he said that, or he was running the film today and he was running practice. He was out there in crutches. But I know that after surgery, sometimes flying is not the greatest idea. I don't know. They haven't announced what's going to happen. But even if he makes it out there to Denver for games 1 and 2, what's going to be the impact? I noticed that our coaches, when he was out during that injury and we were closing down the game, luckily the players just kind of, they did their job, right? But we subbed a lot of people in and out in that last 2 or 3 minutes. It's almost like we didn't miss a beat. They were like, we need to go small. We're taking these guys out. We need to go big. We're bringing these guys in. Somebody's got foul trouble. We're putting them back in because there's 2 minutes left. Like, they had it all down. So I'm not too worried. But what do you think as far as play calling goes? What his impact is to the team? Because these are things we don't know as fans. When a coach goes down, we're like, players run the NBA anyway. No, they said they've been play calling a lot more this year in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Legit take. It's going to hurt the Timberwolves. They're going to
Yeah.
try to paint this rosy picture, like,
Right.
next guy up, our head assistant, we're not going to miss a beat. It doesn't matter. Coach Finch is going to be, doing film. He's going to communicate throughout the week to get us ready. It is not like having his voice on the sideline and in huddles. It will affect the team. How much? I don't know. But playoffs, Tony, is all about comfort. You want to be in your comfort zone. Now, with Chris Finch not being on the sideline, that creates a little bit of discomfort because the voice is going to be different. In those key moments, you can't tell me that when you have 5 coaches on the sideline, that's the head coach and his assistant coach, everybody thinks a little bit differently. There was an old saying, Flip used to say this all the time. You put 20 coaches in the room to game plan against a team, you're going to get 20 different game plans. And so when it comes to situational basketball and things that may occur during the game, that's not Chris Finch on the sideline. So it's going to affect the team. How much? I don't know. But it's going to test the will of the Timberwolves. It's going to test to see how mentally tough this organization is. I'm hoping and praying that he's not out too long, because to have him out for a significant amount of time, that's a gold bar in the bag of the Denver Nuggets. It's just an advantage that they're going to have. Their coach, their voices are going to be the same on their sideline. The Minnesota Timberwolves are definitely going to have to do some adjustments for sure.
I'm just imagining, they come out and meet out on the floor a lot of times for timeouts.
Yep.
They don't sit right on the chairs. They're going to have to adjust and sit near the chairs. If he's going to have his leg out, extended or whatever in a brace, he's not going to be able to stay up on crutches the whole game. He's going to have to be sitting for some of those timeouts probably, unless he mans up and drugs up and doesn't feel the pain, which is probably a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
how
I'm just curious. I've never seen an NBA coach injured in this way, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, as far as a legit take. I don't remember ever seeing one other than Golden State's head coach. He had the really bad back.
Steve Kerr,
Steve Kerr couldn't get up a whole lot, but he was still on the sideline. He was still in the chairs. He was still doing the timeouts. I've never seen an injured coach in the NBA like this. I can't think of one, which is mind-blowing that it's never happened, but it hasn't. So on to the next thing. Great take there. 2 things. We'll combine them because we're kind of getting up on where we want to move on to the next thing. But impact of the long breaks between games 2 and 3. Because right now, they've got us like Friday or Saturday, Monday, and then maybe Friday, Sunday or something. I forget what the 3 and 4 were. It's a long break. And also, the other wild card I mentioned, Naz Reid. Naz Reid had a lot less numbers than he usually has in the regular season. I know it's playoffs, it's different, but 9.5, 2-1. That's not him, right? He has way more than one assist in a game. He has way more than 2 boards. I don't know if it's an activity thing, a matchup thing, if they were too small, so we couldn't play him as much. What's your take on Naz Reid and the long break with the games?
Yeah, I hate the long breaks. It really hurts the team that gets off to a quick start in the series. You hate to dampen momentum. In terms of injuries, I think it helps the Denver Nuggets because Murray is a little banged up. So it gives
Yeah.
him multiple days to rest. It's a little bit different if you're playing every other day. So that's an advantage, I guess, towards them. It does give Chris Finch, more days to kind of heal up to get on the
Yeah.
bench. So, it's one of those things where I think it could benefit both teams. From a fan standpoint, if my team comes in and splits with the Denver Nuggets in Denver, and you have that momentum building and you don't play until the following Friday, it gives coaches a chance to go back to the drawing board. And if I'm the team that has the momentum, I don't like that because there are some just great coaches in the NBA. And so when you give them time, anybody can come up with a really, really good game plan. Obviously, their coaching staff won a world championship last year, so their staff is second to none. But I really don't like the gaps in games. And I
Yeah.
know the NBA likes to do that. And, it's all about money and,
Yeah,
utilizing games
weekend
to be in,
games. Yeah,
prime time,
prime
get the
time.
best ratings, stuff like that. But, it's been that way for a while now. In terms of Nas Reed, I really don't get enamored with his stats. That guy impacts the game. You're going to see it in this series. He's one of these players where at the end of the game, he's going to have his nights where he'll go for 25 and 8, maybe throw 4 or 5, different assists. He has that ability. He has that in his
Right.
bag. But the thing about Nas Reed is he does so many intangible things that really don't show up on the stat sheet. That's why he's 6 man of the year. And I think you're going to
Right.
see that. He's athletic. He runs in transition. One of the best rim runners in the NBA. He's really improved his handles. So there are times where he can hit gaps and he's dunking on you. Then he can step out and shoot the three. And he can
Yeah.
guard anybody on the floor 1 through 5.
He's mental.
So, yeah, I really don't get enamored with his stats. I just know the guy is going to be ready to play, and he's going to show up this series. He's going to be really, really important because if he can create that same type of energy and make those intangible impacts, I think the Timberwolves have a great chance at winning.
One of the stats I looked up in research for the show tonight was in baseball, they have what's called WAR, wins above replacement. And it
Yep.
basically ranks a player. If he goes down to the minors, how many games will that team lose over an 162 game season? The NBA has something similar on the ESPN website where it talks about different stats. And one of them is estimated wins added, which is similar to WAR. The Joker is 28.1.
Woo.
That's how big of an impact he is. The next best player is Embiid, 15.5.
Yep.
Now, this is what was interesting about this, though. Gobert was 5th at 11.5.
Yep.
The next best Timberwolf in the entire NBA was at 23rd. And guess who it was?
Who was it?
Nas Reed.
Oh, yeah.
Nas Reed. So you talk about that's not a legit take, that's just a stat take. But to me, when the numbers break down, and I looked at a couple different things to validate that all out, and it was true. So his impact as the 6th man playing 20 minutes is better than 80% of all the starters out there in the league. That's crazy. I was just impressed to see that.
Yeah.
Another quick stat: the cheapest ticket price for Game 3 at Target Center is $251 with fees. $251. That's in the upper deck in the corner, like row R. Okay, the lowest price in the lower deck, $623. That's crazy.
Welcome to
It's the
playoff
conference
basketball, Tom
semifinals.
Vandermark.
I know, and they're not used to it, right? I went back and looked at Flip's era, right? 8 years in the playoffs, 7 of 8. The only year they weren't in was the year he took over. They made it 7 years in a row. They lost in the conference quarters every single year, except for the year they had Spreewell and everybody else. So we haven't had, I mean, last year's playoff run, if you can call it that, even though it wasn't a win in the first round, gave us so much hope, I think, because they thought, oh, if we had McDaniels, if we would have just had a break here and there, we could have really taken him to the wall. Now all the hope is energized. The building's sold out. We can't get a ticket. You know, people, we still couldn't get a ticket. That's how hard it is to get into that building right now. But anyway, on to something that's pretty important. Um, our favorite coach went down with a patella. Lionel, you got to talk about why this matters. You have some issues with some superstitions here.
I would personally, I would like to send an apology out to Chris Finch. I have this jinx. It's called the Lionel Jones jinx. I've mentioned it in our last podcast. The fumble, Cleveland Browns. The drive, Cleveland Browns. When I became a Vikings
Turning on the
fan,
TV.
when I became the Vikings fan, Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Robert Smith, missed field goal to send us to the Super Bowl. Denny Green.
I can blame that on you. That's good.
I'm embracing the Timberwolves. And what happens at the end of the game? The most freakish accident that you
Never
could
see
ever
anything
have.
like it. Yeah.
A player runs into our head coach, doesn't knock him down, doesn't catapult him into chairs, but it tears his patella tendon. So now he has to miss at least a couple of games, which is going to hurt the Wolves. And I believe, Tony, that this happened solely because of the Lionel Jones jinx. So,
yeah, it's
Chris
not
Finch,
okay.
I apologize.
Hopefully he'll accept it. We'll
I
be
hope he
awaiting
does
his
too.
answer.
I hope he does too.
That was great. We talked about how to talk about this, and when you brought that up, I'm like, you really believe it, and that's the scary part. A lot of things do happen to you when you watch teams, and I also used to turn off the TV because I thought if I turn it off, they'll start winning or something will go well. And just from my side of things, I understand because I played baseball a long time as well that superstitions are just part of life. But reality hits when you're like, yeah, another player, another coach. So luckily, if I remember right, your women's team went pretty well without injuries this year. So I know it's not going to cross over to your real life, which is a good thing. So when we look at the Wolves and we're wrapping up the show here, kind of summarize, like, what are your top 5 things that you really think that are going to come out to you and say, this is absolutely why the Wolves are going to win this series, no matter what? Legit takes, top 5, go.
Yeah, legit takes. I think, first of all, we have defensive options for Jamal Murray. We talked a little bit about that. That's going to be huge. The bodies that we can throw at Jamal is going to slow him down. I will go on record to say that he's not going to have a huge game this series, knock on wood. He may have some pretty good scoring games, but I think, I just don't think he's going to have huge games. Number 2, Karl-Anthony Towns' ability to be able to go out and stretch the floor is going to be something that's really unique. I don't think there's another team in the NBA that the Denver Nuggets are going to face the rest of the way that can really stretch the floor like the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then at the same time, you have to take care of a superstar like Anthony Edwards. So I think that is really, really going to be huge. 3, our bench depth is going to be something that's going to cause a lot of problems for the Denver Nuggets. Yes, they are the world champions. Yes, they are a good team. They're not as deep as we are. Player for player on down the line, we can rotate 10 to 11 players. The Denver Nuggets like to play 8. They will go deeper, but they really like to play 8 players. So I think that's huge. I think number 4, just our coaching staff. They have a really, really good idea about their scheme. And I know the coaches on the other side of the floor, they've won a world championship. But I think their scheme is going to be a little bit different. They have to come out of their comfort zone to be able to defend the Minnesota Timberwolves a different way. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be key for us. And then Chris Finch, his ability, I think, to break down film is second to none in this league and come up with game plans. And I think because he's injured and he may not be on the sideline, I know the intensity that comes with that. And I know that he's putting in extra hours to get his team and his coaches prepared to be
He's probably
without
the
him.
worst patient ever at the hospital. They hate him.
Absolutely. So I think those are 5 key reasons that I think the Timberwolves will win. I will say one thing, and I know people make a lot of, you really make a huge deal out of this, but the altitude in Denver is a real thing. I've played out there and I've coached out there. And if you've never competed professionally out there or at the college level, it's a legit thing. So I hope the Timberwolves have prepared for that. It's going to change some things that they can do. Their bench will help them in that capacity. So I hope they can steal one of these 2 games in Denver. But those are 5 key things that I think are going to help the Timberwolves win this series.
I don't know if we're going to get a better top 5 from anybody else on YouTube. That was awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
I've had a great time. I really think that this is something we're going to have a lot of fun with, continue to have fun with, especially if the Wolves keep winning. But even if the Wolves do, win and we have something, we'll always have stuff to talk about. The nice part is that we are never at a loss for takes. So we were looking into another name and it was 10,000 takes. Somebody already had it. And we probably would have reached that number by a certain time to get to that number. But, legit takes, great name. Love it. At this point,
we got to get out of here, man. We got to go.
Doubled it up.
We got to get out of here, man.
Anything from you on the way out here? Great show.
Yeah,
great
I would
takes.
just say all the feedback that we've been getting has been fantastic. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It's going to help the channel grow. You guys have been fantastic, the people that have watched so far, but help us grow. I love doing this with this guy on the screen with me. We're going to have some legit takes in the future that are just fantastic. So subscribe, like, help us grow.
In honor of Chris Finch, we love you, brother. Your patella, it's going to get better. We will see you on the sideline soon. We know you've already broke down the film. And on that note, we say good night and good luck to the Timberwolves in round 2. Take care, everybody. This has been Legit Takes with Tony Vandermark and Lionel Jones. Have a good night.
Good night.